It's not that they're doing different tasks. It's not that they're doing something different. It's just that how the task is split up and how it's assigned to them. And that really changed my life. And I sort of built this reputation as like, he can speed up the development and launch of your product.
Welcome to the Team Amplifier podcast. I'm your host, Byron Summerdahl. Here you'll be inspired by industry leaders who build flourishing tech teams. Stay tuned and prepare to be amplified.
3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, today I'm talking with Siddharth Dalal about task switch cost and harnessing that. And not just completely throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So I'm excited about this conversation. I think this is kind of like a revolutionary thought for a lot of us, me included. And I'm excited about getting into that discussion. But first, I want to introduce you to our guest. Siddharth Dalal is an avid reader, an author, fractional CTO, an amateur cook. The list probably goes on and on and on. So Sid, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you got going on.
Sure, yeah. So I'm fractional CTO at a bunch of startups. I'm also co-founder of my own startup with my teenage son, which is called Broke Robotics. And for the last 10 years, I've basically been helping startups launch products quickly. And before that, I worked a long time at the University of Virginia.
Awesome. So I want to get to know more about you and what makes you tick. So what you read is a good way to do that. And since you're an avid reader, tell me about a book that you've been reading lately that has made an impact on you.
So I read books for entertainment. Right? I'm the kind of person who reads blockbuster fiction, like Jack Reacher kind of stuff. But the book I recently read is one written by a friend of mine who I've worked with before, also another startup CTO. And the name of the book was The Germans Have a Word for It. It was a super realistic book about this guy whose wife dies, and he subscribes to an AI service, which has trained itself with his wife's text messages and pictures. And then it just goes from there. And we're essentially living in this reality. So that was a fun read.
Awesome. I need to check that book out. The Germans Have a Word for It?
Yeah.
I like the title. So really, I wonder if they often have a word for it. I don't know.
They seem to do. They have, yeah.
So, Sid, I warned you about this before we started recording. So it's inevitable at this point. We've already started recording. So it's confession time, Sid. What's a mistake that you've made in the past? An embarrassing mistake you made as a
I made a really embarrassing mistake. I got registered for this conference out in DC, and I did the registration, got the email that you're registered. I put on my calendar, took the day off, all the stuff and everything. I drive to DC for the conference. Wrong day. Like the conference has already passed and I go there. It's the wrong day for the conference. And I had no idea. So I go there, like there's nothing happening at the hotel. And they're like, what are you here for? I'm like, I'm here for the UiPath conference. I'm like, oh, okay. That's not here right now. And so I look at my email and I find that all the reminders from the conference have gone to the spam. So I just assume that what's on my calendar is the correct date for the conference, which I put in wrong in the first place. So the embarrassing mistake.
Were you early or late?
I was late, so I actually missed it. But fortunately, I got a recording of the whole conference. So I had to spend another day watching the whole recording and then reporting back what I learned from it. So that was not fun.
So did you just spend that time when you would have been at a conference in your hotel room watching the conference recordings?
Actually, that was really lucky so I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm remote. So I went to the conference. Conference wasn't there. And the company I work for, at office is up in DC. So I just drove to the offices, met everybody who I hadn't met in a while. Some people I'm meeting for the first time because we're all remote, but some people do go to our sort of co-working space. So I happened to just meet all of them and hang out with them. So that was fun. Yeah.
Good. You were able to repurpose the trip.
Yeah.
All right. Some similar things have happened to me. Horrible when you get the flights wrong and stuff.
Yeah.
Even worse.
And it was a bad day overall. So I drove to DC. On the way back, on the middle of the highway, I got a flat on my car. So it was just a bad day overall.
Well, we all have them.
Yeah.
But it shows that you're human, Sid. That's what we wanted to do with that segment. Okay, let's talk about task switch cost. So today we're talking about harnessing task switch cost. And so what do we mean by this?
Yeah. So if you think of, everyone tells you about context switch cost, like this is the cost that takes you to switch from one thing to another. And so task switch cost, I define that as the time that it takes you to switch from one task that you're working on to the next task. If you're a software developer, you pick up one item to work on, you work on it, you finish it, like submit it, deploy whatever, and then you pick the next thing. And the time it takes you between finishing the first thing and then ramping up on the next thing that you're about to do, that's essentially your task switch cost.
Okay. And what do we mean by harnessing? Because usually, this is how it is for me a lot of times. I want to battle against and eliminate task switching or context switching, we often call it. Like, if we don't, then people get really upset if we are constantly making them context switch. So I'm used to eliminating it. You're talking about harnessing it.
Yeah. And so you want to eliminate context switch cost in the sense of I don't want to be disturbed by Slack or email or messages. But this is sort of a slightly narrower definition of it, where the time takes you to switch between one task to another. And it's different for different people, right? Some people can ramp up from doing one task to another task in half an hour. Some people, it will take them 3 or 4 hours. And it depends on the complexity of the task and how big it is and who the person is, how familiar they are with the part of the system that they have to work on next. But the idea is that if you know what the people are working on, as a team leader, as a manager, you know what they're working on, you know what parts of the system you're familiar with, and you know roughly how long it will take this person to switch from task A to task B, then if you have a mental picture of everyone in it, then you can measure it and then you can use it effectively to you can double the speed of a technical team's output by just knowing this information and using it effectively.
So what does this then have to do with human flourishing? Because I can understand how increasing that or harnessing this task switch cost could help the bottom line and could help increase your productivity. But how would this actually help with the human factor of things?
So for the human factor, there's 2 pieces to it. The first piece is the human factor for you as a manager. Now you're effectively managing a much happier team. There's also the human factor for the people doing the work. They've now, without knowing what's happening, been put in a spot that makes them much more effective. So they have to work fewer hours, they can get more stuff done, use less sort of overtime work beyond work hours, and still manage to achieve what they need to achieve. So it sort of reduces their stress, improves their work happiness, and we'll get into it more later, but it also sort of increases the collaboration between the team on doing stuff.
So are we saying that, we are saying that some people are able to switch from one task to the next more fluidly and without so much cost than others?
Yeah.
Do you think that people who are able to switch tasks quickly enjoy switching tasks more?
Sometimes not. So me, I'm a person who kind of enjoys switching tasks quickly. I don't want to sit and do the same thing 8 hours in the whole day. So I would like to have 3 things or 2 things, at least 2 things, if not 3, and that switch between the tasks throughout the day. And then there are some people who are the opposite. So if you who want to I don't want to do any, if I'm focused on something, I want to do this for 3 days until it's done. And so just knowing that about people is really helpful.
So I may be one of these people. I've been trying to suppress this for all this time because it's just not popular in leadership circles to be okay with context switching. I think I may have people on my team also that they're just good at context switching. But I've also been, as a good leader should, been trying to suppress that and say, no, you shouldn't be switching your context and your tasks constantly. This discussion is making me kind of question whether or not that suppression should rightfully be an automatic response from a tech leader.
There's a balance, right? You don't want to switch tasks every hour or every 5 minutes or whatever, but you do want to give the people who want that sort of break from one task to do the other task that opportunity. to do it so that they feel more effective. But then for the others who don't, you don't want to do that with others. And to make them more effective, you need to just let them focus. So you need to find out like what works for each person.
So this sounds great. It kind of liberates me a little bit because, like I was saying before, this is not something that among professional leaders, we're not supposed to be okay with context switching. But I've secretly been kind of like a closet context switch lover because I do thrive when task switching. Like I know that they say that nobody's actually good at multitasking, and that's probably still true, I think. But
it's still true. Like you don't want to do it at the same time, right? There's
yeah. But I do feel pretty good at it, and I don't feel like I get completely knocked off the horse when I'm switching from one task to the next. So, okay, maybe some of the reasons are obvious, but I should ask the question because I really want to try to poke holes in this as much as possible. Why don't more leaders harness context switch costs in their team? Why don't they harness the knowledge of this?
So first, there's a stigma because context switching is bad. That's sort of the thing. And in some ways, it's true, right? Like if you're focused on a task, doesn't matter if whatever it is, like whether you're only working on it for 2 hours or 8 hours or a week or whatever, you're focused on a task. You don't want the interruptions. Like you don't want someone on Slack, someone texting you, someone bothering you, someone calling you. You don't want that stuff. That's the stuff that gets confused with the part with the switching between tasks, which is why specifically for this conversation, we've called it task switch cost as opposed to context switch cost, because you don't want to mix those things up. Like, I mean, that stuff is bad. Yes, you don't want to constantly bother people with emails and Slack messages and stuff, but you also want to make sure that you sort of make use of people's inherent ADD, right? So like there's one level where someone is ADD and there's one level where they love to context switch, which is I would say put in the spectrum of like, I want to focus for a week. I have ADD and everybody else is somewhere in the middle. And so we want to make sure that we use that effectively.
The ADD, ADHD piece is actually, it hits home too, because I am neurodivergent, as they say. I've got a very strong dose of ADHD. And a lot of times it's not managed. I've just kind of built my life around this. And maybe that's the reason why I like to jump around from one thing to the next. But how I kind of want to put something else out there for people that are like me, or that they just have people on their team that maybe are thriving more when they're switching tasks from time to time and their switch cost is low.
Yeah.
How can we make them more effective at managing their context or their task switch cost? And how can we help leaders to help those team members to thrive?
Yeah. And so the first part is knowing what it is, right? Knowing what that is. And for software teams, it's easy. It's a little bit easier. Like if you're a team lead, which is when I first learned that I could make this effective to make my team speed up. I wasn't a CTO or anything. I was a team lead for my team. And that's when I realized, when I was looking at the code that people were submitting and as I was reviewing the code that was coming in, I realized that's when I discovered that there were some people who really liked to move between tasks quicker. And they, even if they wanted to do one thing, they would do it in small chunks and then switch to something else, do a small chunk, switch back to a small chunk. And then there are some other people who would just focus on this one task, finish the one task, submit that one chunk, and then move on to the next one. And then I would realize that these people who did this focusing on the task, when they moved to the next task, there would be a sort of ramp up time for them. And so that's when I realized that I could use this effectively by assigning tasks in a way that people got stuff that was sort of what they would like to work on in the size of the task and the timeline of the task versus what they were really interested in doing. And the good part about it, I found that like assigning tasks in this way was a much better mechanism to keep them happy than letting them pick what they were interested in, which was a surprise to me. Like I was really shocked, like because at that point, I was a team lead. We were working on a really complicated project where we were fighting Windows API for stuff. And it was just a sort of a nightmare project. And there were people who I like the math part of this equation. I like this part of the equation. So initially, when I became the team lead, I started assigning people like, hey, you like this part, you go do this part. And then when I would have conversations with them weekly, I would realize the parts that frustrate them. And then from that, I realized that if I would just split this work differently and assign these things differently to these people, then I would just speed up the development significantly. And that's when I realized that it's not that they're doing different tasks. It's not that they're doing something different. It's just that how the task is split up and how it's assigned to them. And that really changed my life. And I sort of built this reputation as like, he can speed up the development and launch of your product. So that was a fun realization that I had. And it was from the simple observation of just how often people submitted their code and how often they switched between the tasks that were on the board that were assigned to them.
Sounds like there's just some extra thought processes to go through as you are dividing up teamwork and tasks. Maybe it even like affects how you slice your features and cards that you're working on. You might end up making things like shaping the features in a different way just to cater to a team that has this makeup.
Yeah, and as you decide how to split stuff between people, the size of the things that it's split up into is different for different people. And part of the reason, and you realize this, you go to your work board, whether it's Jira or Asana or whatever you're using, and you see how much stuff people have put in progress. Like there'll be some people who have one thing in progress, and there'll be some people who have 4 things in progress. And so that's your first step to figuring out, like, who are these people who want to do multiple things at the same time? And who are these people who just want to focus on one thing? By seeing how much stuff they move into in progress from to do. And that's your starting point. And then from your starting point, you figure out like how long does it take them to complete this task and how often are they making changes to whatever document or code that's needed to be done for this task. And if you use that as your starting point, then you'll figure out like for this person, I need to take this task, make it into 4 tasks so that they can put 4 things in progress and work on those 4 things one after another. And for this other person, even if it's the kind of same task, I just put this one task in there and they'll focus on the one task and get it done. And a lot of it is psychological more than anything else.
What you were just describing to me reminds me of a time when we were having actually some problems getting a team moving and maintaining a good velocity. And we always had this feeling of we're not getting anywhere. We're doing a lot of work. There's a lot of activity, but we're not delivering. And a consultant came in and looked at our work, looked at our we had a Kanban board, looked at the Kanban board, and they said some things that ended up being very true. And I'm wondering how we can reconcile it with what we're talking about here. They said, you've got a lot of people that are doing a lot of, like they're pulling in a lot of cards into the in progress lane. They're all assigned to the same person. And they said, because of that, your work is taking you 2 times, 3 times longer because you've got nobody's actually finishing anything. They're just doing a bunch of activity, pulling things in to in progress and never actually finishing them. So I'm guessing that if we're going to try to get our teams to work like you're talking about and try to cater to their task switch costs, then we need to also put around them some guardrails to make sure that they don't like completely screw up the progress and the delivery of the team.
And that is 100% true. And that's where my first management learnings came in. So when I first started getting from team lead to actually managing the team, that's when those learnings came in. Is we can't just do this. We need to make sure that stuff gets completed. And so we need to make sure that people move stuff to done. And there was a manager I had who I'm not a biggest fan of, but one thing I learned from him was he had this thing called the definition of done. And so when we're moving through all these tasks and when people are working on multiple things at the same time, you can't let it slip through that nothing's getting done. And that's part of like effective management is like making sure stuff gets done. I mean, I used to meet with everyone on my team one-on-one, personally, weekly, make sure that we understand that we need to like get this done, not just move 50 things into progress and never get anything done.
Yeah. Well, so let's just imagine that somebody is listening to this episode and they see the value in trying to determine people's task switch cost and then to start to harness the power of that in their own team. So what are some things that you can, from your own experience, that you can maybe call out, like pitfalls that they're going to find? You can kind of warn them about, hey, you're going to have this kind of problem as you start doing this.
Yeah.
What are some things?
Yeah, if the first thing that I learned really quickly is that when I realized this, what I started doing was that the people who got through stuff quickly and had low task switch cost, I was giving them all the small things. Like, hey, like here's a small task finish, here's a small task finish. So they could take 4 small tasks, finish them and put them in complete. And then the bigger tasks were going to the people with the low context switch cost. Now this caused me a lot of issues because the people who were like switching tasks quickly felt that they were getting all the little things and all the bug fixes and nothing important. And so that was my first mistake that I learned from, is that just because somebody's switching through tasks quickly doesn't mean that I can't give them a big task. I should give them a big task too. It's not that they won't do the big task over a week or 2 weeks or however long our deadline is. It's just that they will switch from the big task to the smaller task and come back to the big one because they want, just like me. I mean, that's me. Like I'm doing several huge tasks right now, but it's not that I'm focused on one. I'll do one in the morning and then I'll do another one in the evening. But I don't want to miss out on the meaty big things just because I can get in and out of stuff quickly. Yeah, that was my first mistake. And the second one is that we've talked before, and you have to repeat it. It's like, don't conflate the task switch cost with context switch cost of being disturbed by emails and Slack messages and that stuff. That's a whole different thing. This is just how to switch between the tasks from one task to another.
Okay, good advice. Good advice. So can you share a time when knowing people's and harnessing their task switch costs led to some unexpected results for you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of surprising. It was the first time I tried to do this. It was kind of surprising to me, like how fast things go. And it was like, so literally the first time we started doing this, we actually had to put more stuff on our board than we could handle. And it was not like put 10% more things because you could potentially had that much time in your sprint. It was like put 40% more things in your sprint. So that was the first surprise that I had. And then the second surprise I had was that if I picked the tasks and split the tasks right and gave it to people, it was more important than picking things that they liked because they felt comfortable with the length and the stuff they're doing. Usually in software engineering, most problems that we're solving are fun. Like, except you're fixing small bugs, that's not fun. But most other problems are usually fun. So I didn't have to sort of spend a lot of mental gears thinking about like which pieces of the system people were more familiar with, which pieces they liked more to work on, what their interests were in the system. It just naturally would happen when we did our sprint planning that tasks would get picked in a way, even if people didn't like it, in a way that would make us move faster and people were just generally happier. And the second thing that happened because of this is it just automatically increased collaboration between the teams, between the people on the team, because they had this, like the people who were switching tasks faster because they were given the time to switch tasks, and the people who took longer, they had more time. They were in the time that they had to switch between tasks. Like the 10-minute person would go and spend that 10 minutes talking to people and helping them with their problems. And the 4-hour task switch person would spend that 4 hours in sort of more meaningful conversations about architecture, software things, problems that they ran into with the rest of the team. So it automatically started building sort of team closeness, which I didn't expect it at all. All I expected was like, oh, stuff goes fast, people are happier. But I didn't realize that it would also increase the collaboration between the teams.
This is so great. And any way to get to know yourself and also get to know your coworkers and get to know the people that are working for you is an opportunity to improve things all around, like taking the DISC profile, the Myers-Briggs, things like that. Those help us to understand each other, ourselves, and the people that are working for us in ways that help us to react to what they say better, or to just understand where they're coming from with their interactions. It almost feels like there needs to be another test for task switch costs to help leaders like you and I to understand their costs. And then that just kind of gives us another tool in the tool belt, like the DISC profile. So
Yeah, that's a good idea. Though it's really difficult to measure with a survey because people really don't know this about themselves, but it's easier to measure with their actions. And so if you're following what they're doing on a Jira board or Kanban board or whatever, if you're following as a team lead in software, like the code commits and their submissions, and when you start using that to sort of build their profile of like, okay, this is the size of things that I should give this person. And that helps a lot. So maybe there's some way to objectively measure this. I haven't really tried it, but yeah.
I have a feeling you'll come up with something eventually. Yeah. When you do, let me know. So Sid, what's something that tech leaders can do tomorrow or today to begin promoting human flourishing in their teams?
Just pay closer attention to what they're doing and how they're doing it. And that will help you figure out, like, maybe it's not task switch cost, maybe it's something else, but just paying closer attention to what people are actually doing and less attention to what they tell you when they meet you one-on-one is really important, which I didn't realize. And one thing I learned with my teams is that I would always have sort of a mole on my teams, is that this is the person who assesses the sort of mental, psychological state because you're a friend of everybody, and come and tell me first if anyone is unhappy for any reason. But the second thing I would do as soon as I found out that someone's unhappy is go and see what they're working on and how often do they have to do things, and like how many things are assigned to them, how many clients are they working with, and what's going on there, and then decide, okay, this is how I need to switch things over between the different team members.
Yeah.
So you don't listen to people. They don't tell you as a manager what's wrong, but somebody else on the team will, and then figure it out.
That's the key takeaway. Get a mole.
Get a mole. Yeah.
Every leader needs a mole. Well, Sid, thank you so much for your time, your insight, your wisdom. How can people connect with you?
So you can connect me at fractional.com. So fractional is like fractional and accelerate, a name that my wife came up for my consulting company. So because that's what I do. I accelerate your software development as a part-time sort of advisor / tech leader. And my email address is sid@fractional.com.
Cool. We'll make sure all that makes it into the show notes. Awesome. Great conversation, Sid.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was great chatting with you. Yeah.
All right, let's do it again. See ya.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
This has been another episode of the Team Amplifier podcast. Thanks for joining us. Now, get out there and be a team amplifier.